The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome back to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick from Stress to Logic, your host. And before we continue the conversation with the NAMI representatives, I wanted to let everybody know that WYML will be broadcasting live at the following event. It is the Veterans Path to Hope Spirit Pull featuring Whiskey Acres. You can get tickets if you look up Facebook, Whiskey Acres Distilling Company. It says experience the unique flavors of their handcrafted spirits made from the finest grain and best soil on earth. So it is a fundraiser at the McHenry VFW Post 4600. Hope to see you there. Next, we're going to jump right back into the conversation regarding mental illness, NAMI, and an upcoming event. I want my listeners to know that this is my dream, teaching people about safety. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for my listeners, I couldn't live my dream. So on behalf of my family and myself, I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to live my dream. And I also want to continue to live my dream, and I'm excited to continue to spread the word of safety. Recently, I began a new service as a conference keynote speaker. So if anyone would like for me to speak at future events, or if anyone knows of an introduction or would like to discuss how we can work with one another, I'd love to do just that. The keynote speaking website is www.stress2logic.com. That is STRES2logic.com. If you're aware of any conference speaking engagements where you'd like to have me speak, I'd love an introduction. You can always share my electronic business card, which is Marcus Melnick, MarcusMelnick.com. Now, back to the show. Can you talk about what your involvement with NAMI is and how NAMI can help people?
NAMI started in the early 1980s. There was a whole consortium, and so currently I'm on the NAMI Illinois board, but I'm also I'm the treasurer for the last 15 years at NAMI Lake County in Illinois, about a decade on the NAMI Illinois board. NAMI is the only place that really focused on how mental illness impacted the family. It was a group of family members who originally started it. There were groups all over. Currently, I'm reading about Lake County, and Lake County was originally called the Lake County Mental Health Society, and then it became AMI, the Alliance for Mental Illness. It then would become NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. So all of these groups came together in the early 80s. First group in California, Madison, Wisconsin, and Chicago actually were the first ones called the Alliance for Mental Illness. There was the Society for Schizophrenia and Recovery Incorporated was what now would later become Cook County North Suburban. So there were groups all over the state and all over the country, and they came together trying to say we need to improve the kind of treatment people with mental illness get. And that would be in the state hospitals. At that time, actually, looking at the statistics, there was in 1970 in Illinois, we had 17,000 people in the state hospital system. In 1999, we had 1,748, or roughly 10%. We're now at around 1,600, and half of those are for forensics beds now. So we have a lot less state hospitals, we have a lot more private hospitals. But this in general it wasn't just the identified person who had a mental illness who needed support. Families were really torn apart with a mental health system that said that the fault of having a mental illness was because of bad parenting or other reasons like that. NAMI was the first group who said, look, we're going to get together and we're going to train families about what mental illness is, and we're going to form support around helping their family member and helping the family to survive this devastating illness that, unlike a developmental disability, which occurs at birth, mental illness often occurs when someone's in college and a family has already said, okay, we've already taken care of this child, they's all done, and then all of a sudden this severe mental illness comes up, and so the family has to deal with this. And so they provided support and education to families and support and education to individuals. And since then, the National Alliance for Mental Illness has created what they call the signature programs. So there's a reviewed curriculum that's evidence-based that helps the families and the individuals if they're taught this information and provided that support. And at the national level is where they write the curriculum. The state level is where they make sure that the information gets to all parts of the state, as well as they do the actual training of the signature programs, and then the individual affiliates like Lake County, where we deliver the service, the actual classes themselves. So these three levels of NAMI have been important, and it's been important in influencing legislation. They used to do a national grading of the various states and their mental health systems. I think some of that's broken down with the pandemic, but they've been very important in terms of making sure and push things like in Illinois, we now have stronger mental health parity laws, meaning that if you have schizophrenia, you should get the same treatment as if you have a kidney disease.
Mm-hmm.
And the principles that need to be there. Mental illness is something that's we still don't fully understand, but we understand enough about it. We know what works day to day.
Very good. And the website for NAMI is N as in Nancy, A as in Adam, M as in Mary, I as in Ida.org. And on March 6th, I will be presenting a program on how to manage agitated people. And this is not violent people. This is people who are getting more and more agitated and uncomfortable, and certainly applies to the world of NAMI, but it also applies to the world beyond NAMI, because we all get agitated from time to time. So this is going to talk about how to calm yourself down, how to calm other people down. Do you have a website that you can refer people to if they had any questions for you or wanted to engage you? Or is the NAMI website the one to use?
NAMI Lake County has its own website. It's NAMILAKE-IL.org. Each of the websites, and you can actually find it from NAMI.org. You can get to the Lake County website. That'll actually have information about your talk. And we have a monthly session where we bring in speakers and people can see it virtually. And at some point, we'll probably try to have those be in person. Most of our signature programs are both offered either in person or virtually.
Very good. John, can you offer any final thoughts regarding maybe something I didn't ask you about what you do?
I would like to say that one of the most important things is that the workforce is underrepresented with people with mental illness. And we have a lot of people who need support service, particularly as the population ages. And so I've found that there are people with mental illness who are very empathic and understand instinctively how to influence people in ways that would be helpful. One of our board members, Chris, I think you'll talk about later, is an example of that. But in 1989, I did work with a person with severe mental illness. I didn't know that's what they were. And I just met this woman. I was in charge of 3 group homes with 10 people in each. And I saw this woman in the school, and she was able to get those kids to do what they were supposed to in the lobby. And I said, I want that woman working in my group home. And later I would find out that she had a mental illness and she was a client, and therefore I wasn't supposed to hire her in 1989. And I said, well, but I don't care whether she has a mental illness. She's going to be good at doing what I need her to do, and I want to hire her. They really gave me a hard time, and then they told me, well, we don't know if people should be reading records or what if they look at their own record, and oh my gosh, what would happen? That woman went on to not only be hired as a part-time staff person to fill in at a group home, but she went on to become a full-time staff working in the home in which she lived in with some of the staff that she worked with, and she earned their respect, and they earned her respect. And together, it was a real learning experience when there wasn't any manual. And we now know that people with mental illness can recover. And I'm here to say that they can make tremendous staff and can have some insights that the educated professionals for whom might be most interested in being in a controlled counseling setting might not be that good at. And I think that we need to tap into that workforce. We know that some of the most important work happens in the home and not in an office. And I think that we need to tap into this underemployed population. There's training available that Chris can talk about and has taken advantage of. I think that it's a part of the movement that needs to be a natural progression. And the second would be I've been really involved in housing, and supportive housing is a really great thing, and people can look at some of the housing that's been developed in Illinois and elsewhere around the country where people just live in their own apartment. They don't need to live in group homes. I used to think that was a really smart thing. Now we know it's much easier to live in the community without someone else with difficulties in your same apartment or house. You shouldn't have to have roommates if it's not your choice. So those are things I would say.
Awesome. John, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to our listeners about the important work that you do, helping people with mental illness and incarceration. And really, I'm just thoroughly impressed at your involvement in both academia and boots on the ground. I think it's a great, great mix. Thank you, John.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
So we're going to segue to a member of NAMI whose name is Chris Huber. Chris, thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here. I appreciate this opportunity.
Can you tell everyone, what is your origin story? What's your background, your education, and what are you doing now?
My education and work history was focused on engineering. Got a bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois in mechanical engineering and a number of years of experience working for automotive and industrial equipment manufacturers. In 2021, I lost my brother to complications associated with unmanaged mental health and substance use disorder. It was a very difficult time for both myself and my family. And it was during that time that I had some reflection on my own efforts and wanted to try and make a difference in the lives of other people. Decided to pursue a career change. I became a certified recovery support specialist and enrolled in a master's degree program for rehabilitation counseling.
Fantastic. So you have a mental illness diagnosis. How did you discover that? How old were you? How did that come to light?
I was not aware of any specifics regarding mental health until I was in my early 30s. I had some challenges when I was growing up with what would be called depressive episodes, but my family was not overly knowledgeable about what was going on and tended to just treat it as normal aspects of growing up as a child. But it wasn't until my early 30s when I had an experience that was a little bit more, say, different, if you will. I was exhibiting some behavior that was very uncharacteristic. Historically, I'm a very good employee. I lost interest in going to work. I started to behave in ways that would be considered disruptive in public. My family had kind of caught wind of this change in behavior and called in for a wellness check. So they essentially called the police. The police came to my home and escorted me to the hospital. And I spent a little bit of time at the hospital. They weren't really sure what to do. So they called the police and had the police take me to jail for disorderly conduct. So through that ineffective intervention, I had to learn the hard way that I was living with a mental health condition and had to essentially seek support in the community and educate myself on what was going on to better manage my own life and help mitigate the condition that I'm living with.
So you mentioned being taken to the lockup, and I kind of cringed when you said that. Like, that's not the solution. That's not the right solution in my head. But from your family's perspective, that might be the only thing that they knew about. You did mention that this was an ineffective intervention, and we discussed ineffective interventions offline. What are some other things that you've been involved in that are just not effective or were not effective for you?
Generally speaking, my family is not very knowledgeable about mental health. They don't engage in my life to really understand the precipitating behaviors that may start occurring before I have some sort of a mental health crisis.
Stephen Covey's eighth rule is to treat others the way that they want to be treated. And for example, I'm a human being. Life sometimes upsets me. When I'm upset, I need time to process. I need time alone to process what has happened. And I'm going to be a little bit facetious when I say this. My wife is the person that comes up to me and says, and she doesn't really say this word for word. I'm exaggerating. Oh, poor baby, it'll be all right. And for me, that's not what I want to hear. I want to be left alone so I can process, because I need to figure out what I'm going to do to overcome whatever instance that is. How can someone figure out how to meet another person who has a mental illness in their own subjective reality? And we all have a subjective reality.
I definitely think listening skills are important here, and trying not to be forceful with the individual, try to empathize with them, understand that they may be going through a situation that we don't fully understand. And just because we don't understand something doesn't mean that what they're experiencing is something that's wrong and has to be forcefully changed. I would suggest not boxing people in and sticking them in an environment where they don't feel uncomfortable. Again, Marcus, this is probably not a great topic for me to discuss.
Okay.
I think that there are strategies for crisis intervention training and mental health first aid that are very, very important for people who may be interacting with individuals in some sort of elevated crisis state.
So, Chris, when someone has a mental illness, they're always recovering. And how did you recover? What organizations did you work through to get to the point that you're at today?
I found a lot of benefit in attending various support groups through organizations in the community and networking with people who have lived experience with mental health. And through the process, we share information with what works for us as individuals. We're able to collaborate and learn from each other and identify strategies that are helpful in recovery.
So did you recover before you got involved with NAMI?
Yeah, so what prompted me to join NAMI was the loss of my brother. During that time, I had significant challenges with depression, but largely I was in a good state. I had a successful career. I was living well with mental health challenges. So NAMI was somewhat of an outlet for me to share my experience of my brother as well, and really take my recovery journey to the next level, if you will, get involved and develop a sense of purpose, trying to help others.
Awesome. So you're in a position where you help NAMI. You're on the board. Tell me about the ambassador work that you've done.
So NAMI Illinois Alliance of Peer Professionals is an organization for individuals with lived experience who are looking to advocate for the advancement of the profession and of individuals with lived experience of mental health. And essentially through that organization, what we're trying to do is encourage people to utilize their lived experience in a way that is helpful for other people. And we help them pursue certification through the Illinois Certification Board to become a recovery support specialist. They get provided training and education in the fields of advocacy, mentoring, recovery support, and professional responsibility, and train them to leverage their lived experience to help other people.
Fantastic. And when someone goes through this, are they able to help future families and employers be better informed and help navigate the unique swerving of the road, so to speak?
Absolutely. So the main focus of the CRSS credential is for individuals to help others in their own recovery journey, but it also equips people with the knowledge and experience of working with organizations and to pursue opportunities for systems of advocacy to help shape systems of care.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I joined NAMI in 2022 after my brother had passed away, and having struggled with my own challenges with mental health, I realized that I needed to seek support in the community. And NAMI is one of the largest grassroots organizations to focus on education and support for individuals living with mental health conditions. And I found that they were very inviting and accepting of my circumstances. I found people that understood the things that I'd been through and didn't judge me for that. There were also many opportunities for me to get engaged with the organization and develop a sense of purpose. And through sharing my own experience, I'm able to help provide some insight to other individuals and essentially serve as a model of hope and recovery for other people living with mental health conditions.
And that you are. You are certainly the epitome of what people who have struggle with mental illness can become. I have a ton of respect for you. You changed careers. You're going back into school. Much like John said, to tap into this understanding group of people who understand mental illness. I have conversations with my wife, and I'm going to get to a question in a minute. And, there's things that happen in the world that don't make sense. A lot of the violence that happens in the world doesn't make sense. And she constantly says, I don't understand. Why are people like that? And in my mind, I don't think I have to understand why someone is in crisis other than that they are in crisis and to get them the help that they need. Would you agree or disagree with that premise?
I certainly agree with that premise, and it's not required that we be an expert on the condition or the experience that they're having. Noting that there is some sort of opportunity to get somebody help is definitely the focal point here. And then knowing what kind of outlets can serve as assistance for the individual is certainly important.
Very good. What final thoughts can you offer, Chris, to the public who may be struggling with the same things that you've struggled with or the same things that NAMI can help with? What would be your final thoughts?
I think it's very beneficial for people living with mental health conditions to seek support in the community, become a part of something greater than their own experience. Networking and building a support network in the community is something that we could fall back on in the times when we do struggle. And it's during those times when we're struggling, these individuals who are part of our support network kind of understand what we're going through, and they can effectively provide some sort of meaningful intervention.
Fantastic. Chris and John, thank you for joining us on this show. My intent and my hope is for people to attend the training, learn something, get involved with NAMI. They do take donations. Once again, their website is nami.org or the Lake County chapter. John, can you repeat that website for us?
NAMI, NAMI, Lake, LAKE, -IL.org.
Thank you very much for doing that, and thank you both for taking the time to talk to our listeners today.
Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate it.
So you've heard me talk about some keynote speaking that I do, and I wanted to explore this just a little bit. I have several keynote presentations where I go to organizations and deliver training. One of them is Overcoming the Hot Stress Mess, which is also the title of my book, which is coming out later in March. I'm waiting for the test copy, and then I will approve the distribution. And the other one is Managing Agitated People, and that is what this seminar that we've been talking about in this episode is about. And it's about the pre-violence. It's about people that are started to get wound up, how we can calm them down, and then how we can calm ourselves down. And then the other thing, which is seemingly unrelated but still has a psychological element to it, I used to be 120 pounds heavier. So I have a keynote presentation on how I lost 120 pounds. And mostly what it was, I had gastric bypass surgery, but this was pre-surgery. I dropped about 56 pounds, making very small but important changes to my diet. And interestingly enough, I wasn't hungry. Now, there was a pharmaceutical that helped with that, and in that keynote, I go over that. So a couple weeks ago, I had the honor of being selected to speak at a TEDx, which is a 18-minute talk. TED Talks are 18 minutes. TED is a national organization, and TEDx are local organizations. This particular local organization was a student group at Purdue University. So 2 weeks ago, I took the stage at Purdue University and delivered a very brief, because the program usually on the short end is 45 minutes to an hour. On the long end, it's a 4-hour seminar. And I gave an 18-minute presentation on overcoming the human stress response. Had some great reviews from that, and although I don't have a copy of the video that was taken yet, I should have it in the coming months. So if you'd like to see that, or you'd like to talk to me about speaking opportunities like the one at NAMI, please reach out. My business card is Marcus, M-A-R-C-U-S, Melnick, MELNICK.com, and my keynote speaking website is www.stress2logic.com. So my electronic business card is marcusmelnick.com, and my keynote speaking website, where there's more information on what the talks actually have in them, as well as how to book me as a speaker, you can go to www.stress2logic.com. I certainly hope to see everyone at the NAMI meeting this week. Again, if you need the information, please reach out to me, marcusmelnick.com, and I will send you the Zoom link to log on. Thank you very much, and stay safe.
The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.